Hey, so you want to hear something crazy? I've been doing animation reviews on this channel for over 4 years now, and I'm not gonna lie, that's weird to say when I'm not even old enough to legally drink yet, but through it all, I've come out far different than what I was at the beginning. I've gotten a better understanding of the algorithm, video and audio editing, thumbnail making, script structure, narration, working with others. It's been an interesting ride that's helped me develop skills I never had and meet a ton of people I wouldn't have otherwise. However, in that learning experience, I've also developed rules to live by that I had to figure out the hard way. 1. Try not to work with mobile game ads for sponsorships. They're strict about what you can say, hard to please, and to be honest, I don't like most of them. 2. Don't rush out content for the sake of staying in people's feeds when you're having writer's block. There are people who work well under creative pressure. I do not. And 3, don't make follow-up videos on the same series or franchise if it's confusing for new viewers. You know why? Because inevitably it's not going to perform as well since you're limiting your viewership to the percentage of people who've already seen the first. That's why the only long-form series I've talked about in more than one video, aside from Bakugan, has been Total Drama Island, a series that, after a while, got a new cast and theme for every season, which made it possible to talk about my favorites and least favorites without needing to tediously summarize everything that happened before or after. Really, all I needed to say was that it's a parody of reality TV competitions that pit anywhere from 13 to 22 teen stereotypes against each other for a shot at $1 million. Every season, it bases itself around a new idea to keep the concept fresh, and since, unlike reality TV, every outcome is predetermined, more predetermined, not to mention fictional, the writers can focus on creating shocking twists, fun or otherwise insane challenges, and of course, keeping the most entertaining characters around for longer to develop them. I've always thought it was a genius idea for satire that added a humorous edge the real shows never could while retaining what made them engaging. It was the first show that ever got me actively invested to the point I'd keep up with it from week to week, and the 2 videos I made talking about it were my first real big reviews. So needless to say, I was excited when I heard the series was coming back. It had a very respectable run of 6 seasons before its first cancellation back in 2016, but I kinda thought the series as we knew it was dead and buried after Total Dramarama, a non-canon baby spin-off of the original series that ran for 5 years and ended up with more episodes because God is dead and we killed him with weird fart fetish material. Yeah, you've probably never watched the show before, and I don't blame you. It's an unironic, edgeless waste of time that was somehow released outside the late 70s where it and every other baby's cartoon belongs, but if you've seen anything from it, it's this clip of a fairy sniffing toddler farts. Why does he do that? Is this considered a normal occurrence? Well, that would require me to watch it, and I'm not doing that in this lifetime. So while the franchise wasn't technically gone by that point, I'd lost any possible interest. But, lo and behold, a few years ago, we got confirmation that 2 new seasons were on the way. And unlike the last true season of TDI, The Redonkulous Race, which in itself was sort of detached from the rest of the series to be its own thing, this was going to be a true reboot with the original host Chris McLean and his assistant Chef Hatchet. So naturally, I got hyped waiting for updates. And I waited, and I waited, and 2 years passed without much to show for it beyond getting confirmation that it was indeed in production. Then, finally, back in October of 2022, a promotional image showing the new cast was revealed, and to say the least, reactions were mixed. Not that there was much to go off of besides a vague paragraph about challenges involving TikToks and ones based on disaster/horror movies to make for, quote, the most intense season yet, but people weren't divided about the concept. It was the cast, or more specifically, their designs. You see, if there's one thing everyone recognizes from Total Drama on a visual level, it's the series' distinctively sharp, thick outlined, very 2000s characters, who are all designed to evoke common tropes and stereotypes of teens from the era, and you could just feel their personalities oozing from their designs. All you need to know about a character like Owen is perfectly summed up in his appearance, and the crew finding a way to do that for 22 unique characters is really impressive. Shit, even when they had to create another 59 designs over the next few seasons, they still nailed it. You could tell exactly what they were about just from a glance, and that's the problem fans had with these new designs. They don't have that distinctive quality whatsoever. Some are better than others, mainly MK, Ripper, Axel, and Scary Girl, but a majority of the others, including Millie, Priya, Chase, Nichelle, Julia, and Raj, have almost no distinctive features or traits to indicate their personalities, causing them to resemble background characters. Meanwhile, Damien and Bowie are out here resembling OCs created using a fan editor, since something about the way their fits come together doesn't look right. However you want to categorize them though, none of them have that main character energy all the other TDI contestants do, so we got off to a bad start, but recently, the full series came out in Italy, and fans found the English voice track, so we've basically got the whole series a little early if you know where to look. And from what I've seen, fans have been seriously eating it up, saying it's a return to form, the best season we've gotten in years, what have you. And do I share that opinion? It's sorta. I didn't dislike it. I was thoroughly enjoyed across the season, and I thought that in terms of jokes, the writing was mostly sharp. I definitely rank it above Pacateo, All-Stars, and possibly Revenge, but compared to Redonkulous and the original 3 seasons, I don't think it's there. And the whole time I was watching, I was enjoying myself, but at the same time, I also couldn't shake this feeling that something was missing. So to try and articulate why I feel that way, I'll dive a bit deeper into what I think the series does better or worse than its predecessors, starting with the theme, or rather, the lack thereof. As mentioned before, each season of Total Drama up to this point has gone for a new gimmick to shake up the formula. The first season played out like a vanilla Survivor satire, as you'd expect, and they seriously nailed that format, but by the time it was finished, the crew had exhausted most of the challenge tropes those kinds of series had. So to keep it from getting stale, from season 2 onward, the show kinda just kept getting more and more extreme. First, the cast got challenges themed to different movie genres, then a new cast had to deal with a version of the original island covered in toxic waste, the list goes on. So obviously with that in mind, the first question I had was, what's gonna be the theme? Las Vegas? In space? To Hood? Well, according to Chris in the first episode, the showrunners want to get back to basics for the reboot by pretty much doing the same thing as season 1 with a newer cast, and yeah, that makes sense, but at the same time, I can't say I'm not a little disappointed. Like, I don't know where they were supposed to go after season 6 had a fully mechanical island. Maybe that's why they decided to go for a reboot in the first place instead of another sequel season, but after we've come so far and seen so many ridiculous circumstances, returning to Camp Wawanakwa does feel a little mundane. I mean, technically they say this season is going to be way more intense than the first, but that's kinda what Revenge of the Island was for. It took the basics of the original concept with a new cast and added nuclear radiation to shake things up. So compared to that, there isn't a lot that could be done to stand out, and to be honest, having seen so much already, I didn't notice much of a spike in difficulty or absurdity. What's the most insane challenge here? Try to avoid velociraptors that exist for some unexplained reason? Trebuchet contestants into goals? Cross a river of lava? To me, it seems the crew didn't know how to up the ante from season 1 without losing the relatability, so they watched old episodes and tried to come up with little things to make it more brutal. Gross eating contest? How about we add rainbow barf? Capturing wild animals? Psh, what if they had to take selfies with them? Actually, that last one sounds way easier than its first season equivalent, but you get what I'm saying. It doesn't feel nearly as fresh or innovative as seasons prior, and to an extent, I could forgive that if the challenges were still good for the characters, but unfortunately, I think they were more misses than hits. And when I say that, I don't mean they weren't fun or entertaining, they were, it's just that a lot of them lacked the substance earlier seasons had and sorta missed the point of what made them work. For example, a few of my personal favorite episodes from Island are Camp Castaway, Phobia Factor, and Not Quite Famous, but I don't like them for being super elaborate or putting the characters in extreme situations. It's how the challenges are used to expand the cast's personalities and give us a better profile of them. Not Quite Famous is a talent competition, Phobia Factor is the cast facing their biggest fears. Camp Castaway isn't even a typical challenge, it's just the contestants getting stranded after a storm and banding together when they think they're gonna die. None of them are exceptionally dangerous, at least in a crossing lava sort of way, but they give us moments to understand aspects of the characters we never would have seen before. What they're best at, what they're afraid of, what they do when they think the competition is over. It all helps endear us to the characters as deeper than their stereotypes and game faces, therefore getting us more invested in whether or not they're gonna be kicked. And we only get that level of complexity from these episodes because they're so broad. The rules for each are basic and rely on the creativity or personalities of the cast to make them interesting, which carries over into a majority of the season. But then you look at the reboots, and I'd say there are really just 2 episodes in the season that do a decent job. Episode 2 pits the teams against each other in a pirate battle to sink the other ship, and it lets a couple characters demonstrate how they'd handle leadership, while Episode 4 has the cast attempt to defend or capture the enemy team's skull from a fortress, giving us insight into their strategies and preferred methods of playing the game. They're not too great for helping us understand the characters outside of how they act in the competition, but I'll take it over the rest of the season, which about half can be boiled down to races or obstacle courses. They might add a little caveat like, this character is slowly drowning, so you gotta get a number at the end, or you need to collect these tokens as you go, and the one with the most wins. But in the end, they all boil down to you're at point A, get to point B as you face obstacles along the way. And I've never taken to them. They're just such a generic brand of challenge that every season's done in some way, usually for the finale. And there's only so many ways you can make the same concept fresh time and again. So having 4 episodes matching that style of challenge in a 13-episode season is a little uncreative to me. Plus, obstacle courses and races don't have too much room for specific character moments beyond being athletic and skilled or not being athletic and skilled, so there isn't much you can reveal about the cast aside from 1 or 2 characters pretending to have the skills needed when they didn't, or unexpected characters having the skills. It's a limited range of outcomes, and the other non-obstacle course challenges don't fare too well either. A contestant flings their teammate through a catapult. We learn that a character doesn't like being flung from a catapult. Insightful! And that's how most of them are. They're too restrictive and don't give characters enough room to act differently from how we typically see them. We almost never get an episode where the characters have to, say, find their way out of the woods after being abandoned, which allows for so many possibilities and fun scenarios in a wide open setting. But hey, if there's one thing that matters above all else in a total drama season, it is the characters and how compelling they are to us, the viewers. We've already seen that the designs aren't anything special, but does that translate into their personalities? For a few, most definitely, but not all of them. And that's one thing I can give the reboot credit for. It justifies its own existence with characters who never would have existed before. Since you gotta remember, by season 6, they were running thin on stereotypes, and in the time between its cancellation and now, we had 6 years to develop new stereotypes. So like the first season was great for 2000s kids that grew up seeing all these kinds of characters in media, the reboot does the same for modern kids. It's an entry point for new viewers that allows the concept to be modernized without feeling forced. Seeing as total drama was always based on what was current, so the reboot gives us a modern take that's integrated pretty naturally for the most part. Or at the least, there's never a mention of TikToking like the promotional image implied. But are these new stereotypes used to their fullest potential and given characterization beyond them? Well, for a throwback to my older video, and since I don't know how else I would go about this, let's go one by one from least worthy of screen time to most. Nichelle is a movie star that people think does her own stunts, but she doesn't. That's all we ever get to know about her. Caleb is basically Justin from TDI. He's the perfect character that everyone adores, and it's all for a pretty funny joke about him being voted off first before he can really do anything. Ripper is all of the least funny jokes from Owen mixed with the personality of Scott. He's a rude, wannabe macho idiot that enjoys making references to shit, and he farts. I think the writers were going for an intentionally unlikable character that players love to hate, but he wasn't really vicious enough for me to get there, so he's just a super annoying one-trick pony that stays on way longer than he should and doesn't have the entertainment value the writers think he does. Axel is literally a more aggressive girl version of Sean. Same as him, she's a survivalist who explicitly mentions zombies, and her introduction features a zombie Sean, so the showrunners definitely knew what they were doing when she was created. She isn't nearly as fun to watch as Sean though, so I don't quite get the reason why she was here. Millie's whole thing is that she's going on the show to study her generation and write a book, but slowly as she becomes friends with another contestant, she starts to regret it. This is one of those good concepts I mentioned earlier for a character, but she never gets a personality beyond that and a basic nerd label, so for all the screen time she got, I thought it was kinda wasted. After she's found out, she has a monologue about how she only thought she was better than everyone else to cover up for her own insecurities, and all I could think about as she said it was, damn, wish I'd seen that in one of the mini scenes dedicated to you and your friendship. And speaking of which, Raj and Wayne are 2 hockey bros looking out for each other. There's not much of a difference between the two other than Raj being gay, so I lumped them together, and they're fine. Moving from friendships to relationships, Chase is an oblivious, selfish prank channel YouTuber, and Emma is his on-again, off-again girlfriend who goes between violently hating and absolutely loving him. Like Wayne and Raj, they're also a package deal since I can't see one apart from the other, and I enjoyed their comedic timing, but their back and forth started getting tiring near the end, and once again, their personalities were kind of surface level. Lauren, or as everyone calls her Scary Girl, is also fun, but again, basic as hell. You see what you get. Same can be said for MK, the external reference character of the season based on Aquafina from Ocean's 8 of all things. She's the sneaky thief that caused most of the plot-relevant twists, and I enjoyed her energy, but third verse, same as the first, not that deep. Bowie is the competitive, sassy gay guy. He's entertaining, and his friendship with Emma was by far the least draining, bland relationship in the season to sit through, but fourth verse, same as the first, he didn't get developed, so I ended up liking him less than I thought I would. Whereas my opinion of the next contestant, Damien, was the opposite. His shtick is that he knows nothing about the show as he goes on, so he reacts as any normal person would to the insane challenges, and considering how many characters are so underdeveloped, I assumed that'd be the case for him too. But thankfully, he has a little bit more to him than meets the eye, and in this season, that goes a long way. As you'd expect, he does panic a lot and occasionally dissect the other's behavior, but unlike other straight men type contestants like Dave, who were completely unbearable for their snarkiness and dorky cynicism, Damien surprised me with his pure innocence, determination to vote himself off, and his way of being knowledgeable without shoving it in your face that he's a nerd or whatever. He was possibly the only subtle character all season, and all that's keeping me from ranking him higher was his lack of screen time when he had so much untapped potential. Which leads me into discussing Priya, another great idea for a character in that she was trained by her parents to win if a revival season ever came around. So she's got physical experience for challenges and expectations to live up to, making her by far the most intriguing character from the beginning, and they do expand on her through her interactions with Millie, showing that she's a bit of a pushover for friends and aggressive to anyone that comes after them, revealing that she probably didn't have many before. However, I'm also frustrated by her because there's a massive missed opportunity here in that we never see anyone directly tell Priya that her family is fucking crazy. We get jokes about it, sure, but I was hoping by the end of her time on the show, she'd realize that they're mistreating her, put heavy pressure on her to win for them, and denied her dreams for their own sake, so she'd either choose to lose the game on purpose or win it for herself to take control. But that just never happens. It remains unresolved by the end of the season, and, spoiler, she wins, saying it's for her parents. Plus, Millie apologizes for ever writing about her family, so I don't know how to take that. Ticking another box for characters who never got far beyond their stereotypes, Z isn't complex at all. But for once, that doesn't really matter, as he's just so fun to watch and genuinely hilarious that I didn't mind. The guy's your typical space cadet with a laid-back attitude that's got random knowledge and skills in a couple areas, but for the most part, he's off in another world. And I won't spoil it, but by far, his elimination is the funniest and most in character. I wish he was on for longer than he was, but if he had to go, I wouldn't have wanted it any other way. And finally, the last and best character in the Total Drama reboot was Julia, the one character this entire season that did something I'd consider unexpected. At first, she's a typical wannabe hippie influencer, documenting any kind of spiritual growth to her followers. And so at first, I was thinking, alright, she's just gonna be a mix between Dawn and Dakota from Revenge. But after a little foreshadowing, we came to find out she was just pretending to be nice for her audience, when in actuality, she's an ice queen. And to me, that's what makes her the most deserving of screen time. We got to know something about her beyond surface level observations. And while she's not quite as much of a presence as Heather, the ultimate ruthless bitch of the TDI franchise, she's the closest we come to getting a real threatening antagonist the entire season. I wouldn't say she's the most memorable antagonist by a long shot, nor do I love to hate her all that much, but still, she added a rare element of surprise and intrigue that the reboot was desperately missing among a sea of predictable and one-note characters. Maybe I would have felt different if there weren't 16 competitors in a 13-episode season, making it nigh impossible to get me invested in any particular relationships, but I feel that's more the fault of the forgettable challenges than the pacing. Though it doesn't help when the literal last competition between the final two was given a collective 6 minutes of focus before the series ended, and shocker, it was another race. I mean, come on, the final two takes precedence. Even Pacateo got that right. And you gotta love how in the end, the winner wasn't decided by skill or character, but instead, plain old luck. What a climactic finale. Look, I'm riffing on this season a lot, but I don't hate it. It's not as unbearable as Pacateo Island, it's not as bland as All-Stars, it's got a handful of characters I was impressed by, but at the same time, so many elements of what made Total Drama unique and engaging are totally gone. It's missing a theme to tie the season together, it's missing the character-building moments and challenges that fleshed out the cast and accentuated the drama. It's got a super generic soundtrack in place of the iconic original OST for whatever reason. The less we say say about the new theme song, the better. Really, Chris was the only part of this reboot that I wasn't disappointed by in one way or another. Sad to know that his voice actor was replaced for reasons, and his replacement wasn't nearly as iconic, but he was still the best part of this really up and down season. However, when all's said and done, I do want it to succeed, and I see the roots of TDI there. They may not have sprouted fully quite yet, but a second season with the same cast is coming sometime. So once again, I'll be waiting. I've been Just Stop. You want to be famous? Peace out.